The first rule in grip sport is you tell everyone about grip sport.
Crushing, pinch grip, thick bar, wrists.
If the best guy in the world can't lift 100 pounds on it, I don't give a shit about it.
All right, hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Grip Show. And once again, master of the recaps, Eric Roussin, going to join me, and we're going to be breaking down the Armlifting USA events that took place at the Shaw Classic. And there was a 6-man, basically like, heavyweight, super heavyweight, like pro competition that was different set of events from the Open. And then there was the Open that was offered to, I believe, like 80 kg men's and up, and then women's classes, and then masters classes were offered. Does that sound pretty accurate?
Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
But yeah, Eric, do you have any, I guess just anything that you would like to mention about the experience or being there and traveling and kind of how, I don't know, I mean, how you even decided to do that competition or
yeah, so
how it went down?
So I had already booked a vacation to go to Austin, Texas and Denver, Colorado that week. And I had chosen that week specifically because I was interested in seeing the Shaw Classic Strongman contest. So I figured, you know what, I'll time it to go there. And then, but less than 2 months ago, Ricardo called me and he goes, you know what, there's going to be a armlifting at the Shaw Classic. I said, that's awesome. I'm going to be there. So if there's an opportunity to compete, I'm going to do it. And originally the pro version, the one weight class invitational, they were thinking of 10 guys. And I was sort of on the bubble of the 10. So I think if it had gone 10, I probably would have been involved. But then when it got shortened to 6, I realized, okay, with the names that they was invited, I was just outside. And he said I could be sort of on standby. If somebody drops out, maybe I could get the call to go. And I said, that's fine. But right now I'm just going to focus on doing the Open. So I thought it was cool. I didn't really, Ricardo said that, with the short notice and he wasn't sure of some of the details, it probably wouldn't be a huge contest. But I said, you know what, I'm happy to compete. If I'm there, I want to lift, and I'll have fun. So that's how I ended up there, is that I was already going to be there to begin with. So that's why I competed. But maybe we could talk about that 6-man invitational. It was a 4-event thing. There was a 2.5-inch axle. There was Brian Shaw's inch dumbbell medley run. There was the Brian Shaw's blob run medley, and the grandfather clock 4 reps. And so it was very much Brian had an idea of what he wanted in this contest. He likes his blob run. He likes his inch dumbbells. So those were basically, these are part of the contest. In the conversations with Ricardo, it was pretty clear what would be involved and what he had in mind. And then they settled on an axle like a 2.5 inch, and that was Brian's axle. He had this 2.5 inch bar. It's not a standard lift that we do, but I thought it was interesting. So those were the events. Invitational. I think the invitations were based on past performances in Armlifting USA contests, and I think the people who are involved are all legitimately good picks for this event. But maybe we can go through the names of who actually were the 6. So Dave Labbe, he was the returning champion. He won that grip contest that was there last year. There was only the blob medley and the inch medley last year, but he won that. Luke Reynolds, huge guy from Australia who's been in grip now for about a year or 2, something like that.
Yeah, I would say, probably a year or 2.
Yeah. So he had finished, I think, 2nd at the Arnolds this year. So he got the invite. Patty Haynes, who won the big Swedish contest last December, right? That I forget what it was even called. Was it
like Immortal Grip Wars or something?
Immortal Grip Wars, yeah.
Something similar to that.
So there was a lot of people at that contest, and he's the guy who won it all. And I think that was his first grip contest. He's a strongman.
Yeah, and I believe that Gods of Grip has like an ongoing competitive league or something of that nature. And I think
Right.
Patty Haynes won everything there too, or maybe
This
not
year,
every
yeah.
single event, but I think when they combined everything, I think he was pretty much kind of the front runner
Right.
for that as well. So
So I thought that was an interesting pick. I think this was his first grip contest in North America.
yeah,
Eric Dawson, who I think also placed at the Arnolds. I think he got third. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but
but he's always, I mean, he's always kind of in the mix with everybody.
exactly.
I mean,
He's
he's been around.
He's strong at all the main grip feats. Jesse Pignonen from Finland, who he's been around for a long time. We know that he's particularly good at blobs. So that was interesting. And of course, Big Carl.
Yeah.
Everyone knows Carl. So those were the 6. I thought that was a great lineup for the 6. They did 2 events on Saturday, 2 events on the Sunday. So the Pro Strongman, 2 of the events were sort of intermissions from the Pro Strongman contest. So, there were a few Strongman events, and there was a pause, and then there was one of these events for the Invitational. So, 2 of them were in the main area in front of thousands of people. The other 2 were held in the same venue where the Open contest, which was in a separate building. That's where the expo was. But we were in a back room, so there was a lot less traffic, a lot less visibility.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how that happened. But if we look at how, maybe we cover that Pro Strongman, how that played out. So the first event was the inch dumbbell run. Yes. And it was a pretty tight contest. So they had bells ranging from, I don't know what the lowest one was, but one that was well below the capacity of these guys. And the top 3 bells were, there was a 190, a 210, and a 230.
Yep.
And as we can see, no one managed to get the 230. I know Carl has done that in training many times, but he couldn't get it on this day.
And maybe we'll get into talks of maybe potential injury and stuff. But the other thing is too, we see it in the blob medleys and we see it in these bell medleys, that when you have to do something in ascending order, it can change a lot.
Absolutely.
Especially if there's a disparity between like your left and your right hand, and you have to, maybe rely on one hand at a certain point, and it gets a little more fatigued. So yeah, who really knows why none of them got the 230, other than it's just a ridiculously heavy dumbbell and it's at the very end of the run, obviously. But yeah, that could be it, because there's a lot of bells that guys, I think some of these guys could potentially lift the 230, or like you mentioned, some already have.
Right.
It's just in that order, it becomes a different thing.
Yeah. I think they had a 2-minute time limit. And if they couldn't lift a given dumbbell, then they can rep out the heaviest one that they could. So that's how that works.
Preventing ties, basically, for the event. Yeah.
So Dave LeBay got 5 reps on the 210, which is great. And he did it in 33 seconds. Yeah. so that's pretty amazing. And then Luke and Carl both got 3 reps on the 210. But Luke did it a bit faster. And then, but everyone got at least the 190. So, I think it was a tight, I think everyone did quite well in this. I mean, a 190 bell is, as we know, like 18 pounds heavier than the regular inch dumbbell. So these are all bells that are heavy. So I felt that there were no, their scoring stayed competitive after event 1.
Yeah.
The second event was similar, thick bar event. It was the 2.5 inch axle. So this was an axle loaded, had like tires.
Yeah, I saw the tires.
Yeah, so the pick height was actually much higher than a standard deadlift. So you're starting at a higher position. I don't remember the dimensions the height exactly.
Okay.
I do know that it was 334 pounds. Okay. So, which would have been, a decent, I thought it was a pretty good weight selection for this type of lift. And as you see, everyone got reps. In the lowest, Jesse and Carl got 5 reps, and Dave had the most with 11. I think he got 11 and he secured it, and basically he stopped right there.
Okay. I didn't know if he like I said, I didn't actually watch it, so I didn't know if he had more in him. And that's the thing with these spreadsheets, you never really know if you didn't watch it, but maybe you have more insight to it.
Well, I actually wasn't there on the Saturday either, so I didn't see any of these two events either. But I understood that he got to 11, he just stopped. And I think he
Maybe had
stopped
more.
because I think he knew he had won.
Yeah.
Who knows how much more he could have gone, but so once again, I thought that was a very feels still a tight race. After
Yeah, I
those
mean,
two
well, you
events.
had 4 out of the 6 guys. I mean, either double digit pulls or double digit reps,
Right,
or right on the verge, because
right,
Luke had 8, and if I'm reading this right, Eric had 9.
right,
So I mean, they were right there. I mean, you have you know basically a 8, 9, 10, and 11. Basically
right,
one rep separating everybody. Short of Dave maybe being able to have pulled more or something, but
right. So at the end of day one, Dave was in lead, perfect score, and last place was Jesse. He just gave up a few too many points on the inch medley run, but he wasn't. It's not like he was out of the contest at that point, considering day 2 was a better event for him with the blob run.
Yeah.
But Carl, he did have some wrist issues. He did express, I think he's had a wrist injury, and he was feeling sort of twinges in his lifts. So Carl actually made the decision to pull out of the contest following day 1 because of his wrist. So always sucks to compete when you're not 100% healthy, and he knew probably going in that there's always a challenge. This type of thing could happen. So I think he was probably a bit disappointed, but these things happen. So the field was down to 5 for the second day. So the blob medley run was done, at basically the same time as the open contest for those of us competing on the Sunday. So it was a lot of fun. I don't know where they started. They probably started at the half 70.
Yeah, so it's usually a pretty small blob that they start with when they do the full run.
Right.
But
so that's where I believe that's where they started. And so Dave and Jesse had the best results in the blob medley. They both got to the half, successfully got the half 130, and both failed at the half 135. Dave, it was clear, he says he had time to keep trying to do it, but he really felt he was close to getting ripping his skin, and he didn't want that going into the GFC for the last event. So he's like,
because I say a side note, didn't he tear something at the Arnold and bled on it or something, and then it was like, oh, we got to swap it out.
So I think he recognized, I don't want to do that again. So he stopped.
Gotcha.
And he was the last to go, so he had already knew that he had secured the at least tie for the first place in that.
Yeah, because it looks like they have a time written down for this as well.
Yeah, so he actually won because he did it faster than Jesse.
Slightly faster, but they both ended up at Blobzilla.
Yeah.
And then Eric Dawson pulled a 115 legacy.
Yep.
Or half 115, but I just usually say the number, whatever. Yep. People hopefully know what I'm talking about. But yeah, and then Luke Reynolds and Patty Haynes at the half 95 blob. And probably just dimensions of the Fat Man, or if the Fat Man was slick, I wasn't there, I didn't feel it. But yeah, I mean, it's if it's not something that you've trained a lot, or you're not doing a lot of blobs, it can pose a problem for anybody.
I think that's just it. Is that I think they were all relatively well seasoned. None of them felt, I didn't touch them all, but they all looked okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably what it comes down to, is not enough time training the implements.
And there could be some fatigue from the first day, depending on how. I mean, I know these are different disciplines of grip, going from the thick bar to pinch and whatever, but I mean, yeah, I don't know what the training was like leading up to that, but if you go through a dumbbell medley where you're repping out essentially maximum dumbbells, or hitting triples on them, or failing, and you have time limits, and then you're going super heavy on the axle, and then you turn around the next day, and depending on how you warmed up for blobs, that could make it kind of tricky. You know what I mean? Being day 2, there could be some fatigue there.
And you of all people know this, that because the blobs were in order of weight, but the Fat Man, the 100 half 100, is harder than the next 2 or 3 blobs that were in that lineup.
Yeah, that's accurate.
So basically, had Luke or Patty been able to lift the Fat Man, they may have gone a little further too.
They probably would have ended up very close to Eric with the next few, because you're switching to legacies above 100, and you're going to get that flatter, basically less slope for the next couple. But yeah,
Right.
I get what you mean.
So the points could have been a lot closer had they just got that one. Had they made it to the Fat Man, they probably would have gone a little further. So I feel that could have affected the points as well. So Dave was still in first place following that event. And the final event was the GFC medley, which was in front of the Pro Strongman venue.
Okay.
So in front of thousands.
And looks like the selected weight was 232 pounds.
Yeah, which is a pretty good weight.
Pretty heavy.
I mean, for reps on the third pin. So everyone got the first two weights, the single rep, and then they tried to rep out the heaviest one. And as you can see by the number of the reps, it was heavy enough that no one was getting 30 reps. No,
I was going to point that out, because we've seen that at the Olympia or some of these other things with these medleys being placed in arm lifting competitions.
Right.
Certain weight classes and certain weights that have been picked, people will skyrocket and they'll do 29, 30 plus reps, and it's like maybe that could have been heavier. But with this, I mean, nobody broke through 10 or more.
Right.
The highest one we had was Luke Reynolds looks like Luke Reynolds won this event with 9 reps. Yep. So with Luke pulling that off at 9, and then everybody else, not too far off, but a couple reps, 6, 2 people at 5, and then a 4. I think it's a good weight for that format.
Right.
Just because you don't want them, you don't want everybody kind of missing the weight, or it's just too heavy to really do much with, and it's not really a medley, it's just a max lift.
Right.
But then if they're doing it for 40 reps or something, then it's like, we're not really finding out who's the strongest at some point either. It becomes I don't know. I don't want to say it's cardio, but you kind of get what I'm joking about.
And the way,
it's perfect.
The way Ricardo scores this, these medleys, especially the GFC medley. So if you only get the lift on the first pin, on the first weight, you get 50 points.
Mm-hmm.
You start at 50 points. If you get at least one lift on the second, then you start at 70. And then if you at least get one rep on the third weight, you start at 80. So anyone who gets at least one lift on the third starts at 80 points. And then it all gets scaled depending on, how it nets out. So the guy who gets the most gets the full points. So Luke got 100 points. And then it's just a percentage. So if you got half the reps, you get 90, somewhere between 80 and 100. So that's how the points work. So Luke had the most. He got 100 points. Going into this event, Dave, he only needed to get one rep to solidify the victory of the whole contest. Mm-hmm. So with that out of the way, he kept going, got up to 5. It did seem like pretty much his limit. But he had no motivation to keep going. He had won the whole contest. So good on him winning this contest 2 years in a row. It's a great
back to back.
It's a great exposure event, right? You're doing this in front of all the Pro Strongman. It's a lot of fun. So good on him. Second place was Luke Reynolds. Third was
Patty Haynes.
Yeah. And then I don't have the final score. Did Eric and Patty tie, or did Eric and Jesse tie?
Let me double check. It looks like Patty and Eric tied.
Right.
What did they do? Separate it by body weight from that?
That's what happened. Body weight. Okay. So
I was going to say, I was going to mention that I feel like Patty was probably the lightest body weight of anybody there.
Yeah.
So okay, makes sense.
And Jesse in 5th, but like I said, no one. This was a tight field. No one was way behind. It was, I think, overall, it was a pretty successful lineup. Who they chose, the lifts that were chosen. I thought it was a pretty good contest for them.
Yeah. No, I mean, it seems like it. Like I said, I think a lot of the weights that were selected, whether it's the diameter of the axle, the weight, all that, it looks like all the reps were thought out pretty well, and looks like it kind of delivered as far as not being over or under.
Yeah. And I think Brian was quite pleased with how everything played out. So I think it's a good chance that arm lifting will be back next year. So that's great. But yeah, maybe because there was going to be arm lifting, the special event, Ricardo convinced Brian to have just an open contest. So that's what we ended up competing in. The signups, from what I got from Ricardo, were actually quite low, within a week before the contest. But I think what happened is on Friday, Ricardo was there, and I think he got I don't know if he had a booth set up or he had got a chance to talk to a lot of strongmen, and he convinced a lot of guys to sign up at the last minute. Yeah. So that's why we had 50 competitors just on the Sunday. So way more than expected, and it made things a bit more rushed because we only had 3 hours to get through 50 guys and 3 events. So we got through it, and although it was rushed, we finished maybe 15 minutes late. Overall, I thought what had to be done got done. But yeah, maybe we can take a look at the results. I wasn't there on the Saturday, but we have the results, and I spoke to some of the people who were there. So the Saturday was the women's classes, and the men up to and including 90 kg.
Yeah.
So this whole contest, for the women it was a little different, but for the men's classes, at least, pretty much every class had 1, maybe 2 regular competitors, and almost everyone else, if not first timers, they were what I would consider newbies to grip sport or arm lifting.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of played out in how the scores. But maybe if we start with the women.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine.
Do you want to start with the heavyweights or the lightweights?
We can just start with 70 kg. I believe that's the lightest that was contested. So 154 pounds and under.
So the two names that I recognize are those who finished 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So Danielle Evanson from Wisconsin, she's an arm wrestler as well.
Yep.
And strongman, she does a lot of stuff. And then Ashley Sterling for Virginia. I know I think this is her first year. But yeah, so they finished 1 and 2, and then there was a big jump to the third place, Olivia Hoyam, who I don't know. But they had it wasn't a runaway. Danielle won the Country Crush by 5 pounds. I don't know. Once again, in these contests, you don't know if people stopped. Or
it's tough to say.
Yeah. They tied on the blobs, which looks like they got the half 65. I'm guessing it says 32-1. I'm guessing that's half 65.
You know what I would say?
Half 70.
Probably, yeah. I'd say probably a half 70.
Okay.
It depends. Sometimes they're a little over, sometimes they're under. But with the you take out the handle, 70, 32. Yeah, you're 65, 70 probably.
Yeah,
one of those.
Which is a great lift. I mean, and then the GFC medley. So yeah, I think because Ashley did it a bit faster, she got a few more points on the blob medley than Danielle. And then they both really got a lot of reps on the grandfather clock, but Danielle had the most of 29. So I don't know the weights. I can tell you that for the open contest, the weights were lower than we would have encountered, let's say, at the Olympia or the Arnold, only because Ricardo knew that there would be a lot of first timers. So
yeah, you're kind of being a little more inviting to newer lifters,
right? So for the more experienced lifters, we were able to rep out pretty easily the full minute. But that's that I understand the decision, and but that's just what happens. You see these people get if you get in the 30 range, you know that it wasn't a very heavy lift for you.
Yeah. And then if we bump up to 80 kg, had
right.
2 competitors here. Brittany Diamond winning the event, overall? Well, 295. So there's something that she gave up points on.
Oh yeah, with the blob for speed, yeah.
So maybe something with the blob there, or they tied on blob, but it went to time. Okay,
right. Now Brittany, I don't know her, but I know she's a bodybuilder, and she
I believe she's competed in like some strongman stuff as well.
I think so.
I believe so.
Yeah, but she lifted 230 on the Country Crush, which is a huge lift, and she felt. I saw her post on Instagram. It was like, had she known that she was close to the world record, she may have gone even tried further. So anyway, if this is her first contest and she's getting 230 on the Country Crush,
it's a good start.
That's a monster lift. So
yeah, very good.
Yeah,
and that would have been out of all the women there, I believe that would have been the 3rd highest lift.
Yeah,
on that implement. With we'll get to the next weight class, but Sarah and Jen being the only 2 that lifted more.
Right.
in that next weight class up.
Right. So second place, Miriam Smith. I'm not sure who that is. She did well with the blobs. I guess the GFC was a bit heavy for the second and third weight, but she did get 3 reps on the first one. And then the women's 80 plus kg that was the biggest class. So this class was sort of the exception. There are 4 people in this class that I would consider at a pretty high level. Some of them are newer. Alicia Martin and Rachel Peterson are from the Seattle area. They were at the Arnold's this year. So 4 what I would consider quite strong women in this class. But no big surprise. Sarah finished on top of this class. And Jen taking second. 250 country crush for Sarah. And once again, I don't know if this was her limit or where she just decided to stop. I'm not sure. Now she got a 39.4 block. So I don't know if that's a half 80 or a half 85, but
I'd say 80. Yeah. It probably was a half 80.
Yeah.
I feel like if it was a half 85, I feel like it'd be closer to like 42 pounds, maybe. Okay. But it depends. But I've had half 80s that are 41 and a half.
Okay.
If they're like the fat man style, and you think that, I basically had 85s almost way less than an 80,
right.
Sometimes. So it can be a little bit weird with these numbers. So we're just giving it our best guess off a spreadsheet. But if I had to guess, I'd probably say it was a half 80 and maybe she failed the half 85.
Right.
But, and that was in 14 seconds. So pretty fast as well. Yeah.
And 29, and you see 29 reps. Like I said, I don't know the weight, but 29 reps, meaning it was far below her.
Yeah. And we know Sarah from the Olympia when she pulled like 220 pounds or something.
Yeah.
For a single. So, I mean, we're talking, I mean, and granted, they're repping it out as the last pin, but we're talking about the pro division doing 232. I mean, for a single, Sarah's pulled close to that weight on that lift. So whatever weight they had for her, 29 times, not a big worry for her.
So she was the clear first. Jen was the clear second, and it was a battle for third, as you see Alicia and Rachel.
Real close.
Very, very close. So
basically 2 points.
Yeah, so that was one of the more interesting classes, I would say. And then if we look at the lighter weight men, there were only 2 guys in the 176. So Devin Lee has been very lean this year. He's basically trying to get. He normally competes at 90, but he wanted to get to 80 and try and set records that would hold for a while. And he probably is successful so far.
I was going to say, I mean, like I said, his lifts are usually very strong for, anybody. Depending on the lift,
right? He's
right there with anybody, depending on the lift.
Right.
But you start putting the weight class into it. And is he strictly being lean for the sake of grip competitions, or is it like, I know he had done like an arm wrestling competition that kind of brought him down at 1.2.
Yeah, he's always lean, but I know that to get to the 80, it's because he wants to try to get records. That's his main motivation. But he's normally a very lean guy. So
yeah. I just wasn't sure if maybe he was like kind of competing lower in arm wrestling as well, and it just was kind of like beneficial to like knock out both at the same time.
Probably that's the case, yeah.
But he's gonna set. He's already set tons of records in a lot of different events, and especially if you're talking weight class wise. But you start dropping down to 80. There's typically less participation in those lighter classes, so the pack of people you're lifting against is a little bit thinner.
Right.
The amount of weights lifted. So he's. Essentially, if he can stay at that weight, he's probably going to set about every record you can. That's kind of just how it is.
So a 400 country crush, half. It looks like a half 95. What do you think? 48.
Yep. Yeah. Half 95.
And 34 reps on. It was hard because those of us who were in the 30 range, the instruction is they can't bounce, right? But you want to try and go fast because
you have to go fast.
You can go fast, and you're able to do it. So, basically, if anyone got anywhere between 25 plus, we're all basically the same, because the issue is just sort of, how strict you're being and how strict the calls are being. So I think I sort of group everyone who gets 25 plus in the same boat. We've mastered that weight.
Yeah, I had a kind of an interesting thing too. We won't talk about it long, but with them setting up the axle with the tires and knowing that it was a rep out, knowing that you have a bounce with the tire,
Right.
and trying to reset that, I thought that was kind of interesting because I know it's like, oh, let the plate stack settle for the
Right.
hilt or the grandfather clock, the vertical lift. You a couple times like, hey, don't bounce it, or you have to rest it down. But then you watch some of the axle deadlift and it's kind of it's kind of bouncing a little bit, and you're like,
Right.
That's a tough one to dead stop, because if you basically drop down too quick to where it's bouncing and you have to let it settle,
Right.
could be killing time, or
Right.
you could be kind of killing energy. So I thought it was interesting that it was the tires had bounce to them, but in theory, you're trying not to have it bounce or aid the next thing for multiple
Right.
reps. So that was kind of something that I thought of. I'm like, man, they're gonna have to really let this thing kind of settle, or be careful of how they set it down.
What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? I thought maybe a different way to run a medley of this sort is on the third pin, instead of repping it out for a minute. What do you think of just holding it at the top for as long as you can? Would that measure the same thing? Would that accomplish the same? Because then you will see, because somebody might hold it for a minute, but somebody might hold it two. You know what I mean? It might be sort of, I know it gets into muscular endurance, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like it might accomplish the same thing and just be a little easier. And anyway, just something I thought of. I don't know how, if people would enjoy that type of event, but
I think if like I said, I'm doing this on the spot. It's not like this is pre-planned, but my thoughts are, I think it would be a good option. I don't know that I would fully replace it.
right.
I think it's a good option because, like you said, it might be, I don't know, anything that's like a timed hold. You're kind of like, hey, you got 10 seconds, you got 5 seconds. It's like,
Right.
It's kind of like holding the silver bullet or something.
Right.
It's like you kind of have that, like you're fighting against time. We're not talking weight and reps as much as
Right.
just that time. And it does get into the endurance side of things. The only thing I would say is that it's almost so different in the aspect that if you're going to hold it for time, you can only use one hand. So one hand is going to completely be eliminated. And let's say you have a guy that just has one really strong hand. He could, or she could, in theory, lose out on reps because maybe they have that strong hand that could hold for a really long time, but maybe someone else, given an allotted time,
what do you
could
think
go back and forth between both hands.
What do you think? Hold with both hands. So hold it right for as long as you can, then hold left as long as you can.
I think that would be a better format.
Yeah.
I think that would be better because you kind of
Right.
give, and just because it's a texture lift. I
Right.
mean, being a vertical lift like that, in this case, I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like I said, I like the idea of doing time, but yeah, if you timed both hands and then
Yeah.
added them up, I
Yeah.
think that would be pretty good.
Just
Like I said, it's slightly different, but that would be another option that we
Yeah.
could see. Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then the last class of that day, it was the men's 90, 5 guys. I recognized the first 2 names, the top 2. So Ryan Graberchik from Western Canada.
Yep.
He was the top guy. He
Almost a clean sweep.
almost a clean sweep. He lost a bit on he lost just a bit on the Country Crush. He had 300 versus Vince Broderick from Vermont, and he got the top lift in that class in the Country Crush, 310.
Man, you said from Vermont?
Yeah, Vermont. Vince Broderick.
That's a long haul to Colorado.
Yeah. And then unfortunately, I don't recognize the names of the third competitor, third, fourth, and fifth. Steve Lumpy got third in that class. Well, we should say in this 80 kg, second place was Lewis Schilling. I'm not sure who that is either, but
yeah,
he got second.
Well, and it'd be a tough thing if you're in a 2-person class and it's your first time ever doing a competition, and then you go against Devin Lee Brown at 80 kg.
Right.
It's not exactly fair. But yeah, I get what you mean. As far as just at least noting the people that participated and stuff.
So on Sunday, which is the day I arrived and the day I competed, it was a bigger field. There were 50 guys competing that day. So that's any class from 100 kg and upwards, plus the men's masters.
Yeah, and I say if you want, we can kind of just hit the top 3 for most of these.
Sure.
unless there's some lift that really,
Yeah.
catches your eye. Um, and like I said, I'm looking at a few. There's a few big lifts. I mean, obviously, there's going to be big lifts because, like I said, just because it wasn't, just because none of these lifters were in the top 6 super heavyweight showdown.
Right.
You're still talking about some world class lifters that either dominate in their weight class or, like you said, are right on that bubble of being an alternate or being right there in the mix with the other big guys.
Right.
So we can just go from the top because this one's kind of in order.
Yeah.
So we could just hit masters and then go 100, 110, and then just go all the way down and kind of, essentially other than masters going up in weight class.
Yeah.
So if we go to the masters, we have a clean sweep with Scott Fike, 300 points, 16 reps on the grandfather clock. Blob, they wrote 80 on this. Like some of them, they wrote like the pounds for like the last one, and then this one they're like actually naming like what blob it was. So,
Right.
yeah, I'm gonna say he won on time, but him and John Catalinas I hope it's Catalinas. I don't want to mess the name up, but I think that's the last name.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've talked to John before, but I've never been like, how do you pronounce your last name?
Right.
So
they traveled together. They're both from the Rochester, New York area.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I believe. Yeah, they both train together or have trained together, like in New York or something, I believe.
Right. In third place, Simon Wilson, who I'm not familiar with, but he got third in that class. I should mention how the blobs. So the blob run for at least on the Sunday, you could start at the half 70. Which is where most people do. But if you couldn't get it, you were allowed to go back and do some of the lighter blobs. So Ricardo was flexible in terms of you can start at the lower weights if you want.
Yeah.
You'll only get credit for your top one, but you can't. The minimum is you have to start at the half 70. So everyone had to start there or lower. So that's how that run.
Okay.
So you wouldn't get all the buildup of the tiredness if you had to start at the very very bottom of the wall. But that's how that was run. And then in my class we were 6 in the 100 kg. The only other person I knew was Mark Brotherson, who finished in second. He lives in Boulder, which is right near where the event was. He's actually hosted King Kong before, and he will be hosting again this fall, so that's great. So I had a really good country crush lift. I knew my goal for this contest was to see if I can mix it up with the open weight guys in the country crush.
Yeah.
And luckily I was able to have the top lift of the day. This is the same amount of weight I lifted stage 1 of the Super Series. So I knew I should be able to get close to that. So we were doing 20-pound jumps for the country crush, except when we got to 400 we went to 410, and then we I was the only guy successful at 410, and then I jumped to 4.
So did you take 400?
Tim got 410. Sorry, Tim Connors in the Supers got 410, but he was happy to stop there. I just went for 420. I thought it was fun to try because I knew I'd be close, and it was exactly a double body weight lift, so I thought that would be a fun challenge. So
no, yeah, that's a big deal. And did you take 400, 410, and 420, or did you pass on any of those?
No,
you took all of them.
I did 400, 410 because I knew 410. The way people looked at 400, I knew a few people would drop out, and I was correct. So it was just Tim and I who got 410. Tim was happy to stop there, and I said, I'll just try and go 410, 420 just for fun. So I was successful there. Then I stopped. I was a little disappointed. I thought I would have liked to get to the fat man, but I was stopped by the half 95. I mean, I got some air a few times, but I just realized before long that it wasn't happening. So I got the half 90, which was not horrible, not exactly what I wanted, but I was okay with it. And then Mark was all good on the blobs too. He got the half 85, and he was also very good on. Well, actually,
Except for the
Well,
medley, 27, you had 27 reps
yeah, and
and
Mark and James Orr also who got third. We were
yeah,
all over 20.
yeah, 20 and 21 reps for those guys as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if this was his first contest, he's got a lot of potential. He got 340 on the country crush, 21 reps. I don't know the weight for everyone, but I know we had 165 for the third pin in the
Yeah.
medley.
Well, it looks like he was only about 4 points off of second place, technically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, pretty competitive there. I mean, obviously there's a gap between you and second and third,
Right.
but for second and third, that was a couple reps either way or one blob or,
Yeah.
timing could change anything. So
Yeah.
close for the 100 kg class there. But
And
that
it's,
would put you first place, Mark Brotherson second, James Orr third place.
yeah.
What were you going to add to that, or what were you
I was
saying?
just gonna say, and if we go to the next class, the 110, there's 8 guys in the class, but I didn't know any of them.
Yeah,
So,
these all look like newer names to me. The only one I feel like I recognize is maybe Marcus Ekholm.
oh yes,
Is
sorry, he's the
from
organizer of the Swedish
from
contest. Yeah.
Sweden. So
Right.
that's the only name that I recognize, and then everybody else would be what I would assume is a newer lifter.
Right.
Um, and then, like I said, and then judging by some of the numbers, most of the guys in 110 got outlifted by the top three. I mean, you yourself include, but the second and third place at 100
Right.
would have outlifted all the 110. So I just assumed that it was probably a newer group of guys
Absolutely.
based
Yeah.
on the numbers.
Yeah.
But yeah, we could, I mean, still at least cover that for 110 kg or 242 pounds and under. First place was Vincent Taylor, second place Samuel Wood, and third place Kyle Werner. So
Yeah. And it was a pretty clear 1, 2, 3 based on the overall points. So
yeah, a good gap between everybody. So
yeah.
nothing too controversial there. But then we get up to
125.
yeah,
Yeah.
125, and Jalen Worley taking the overall win on this with a clean sweep and pretty dominant performance.
Yeah. 400 on the country crush. He got the 130, half 130. So he got to the same spot as the pro strongman.
Yeah, Dave and Jesse.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I think he
Lifted
considered that.
Blobzilla. Yep.
I assume he considered that mission accomplished in terms of his first try at the medley run.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so that was good. And he also got same as me, tied for me for the reps on the GFC, got 27. So that was a great performance for him. He was the clear winner of that class. I'm not too familiar with. I don't know many of the others. I think Dave Reynolds. I think
David Reynolds, I believe. I don't want to be wrong on this. I feel like he's somewhere in the New England states, Massachusetts, maybe.
Yeah,
Could be off on that, but I believe that's where he's located. And then
but
Robert Alexander, I definitely know the name. But as far as pinning down a location where
right.
he's lifting out of, I'm not betting any money on it. I don't know for sure.
So they both had decent country crush lifts, and they also both got half 95, which is that's, in my opinion, that's a good result. So
yeah, no, that's like I said, especially if you're not somebody that has a bunch of blobs or always lifting them to hit a half 95 or get right up there to a fat man in a series run like that when you're timed and on the spot is a good performance.
And they tied on the blob, at least for the weight, and they almost tied for the medley GFC. So and their country crush was, the one increment was the difference. So they were close. Robert edged out David to take second, and David Reynolds in third. But that was a big class. There's a lot of guys in that class.
Oh, for sure. And then moving up, this will be our last class of the Open, and last class that we're going to be covering would be the 125 kg plus. So we're talking, basically over 275 pounds. And Tim Connors, who I believe primarily does more strongman type stuff, but he's competed in the Arnold. He's done several different grip things. I want to say he was probably the first guy to ever pinch the Rogue deep dish plates.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Okay.
Because we talk. I mean, the gold standard is always kind of like the deep dish Yorks. That was the big thing.
Right.
And there's things that make those plates very hard to lift, like the way that the lips are rounded on the edge and it's kind of uneven. And you get what I'm saying? Like, so that's why the Yorks were always like that thing. But one of the issues with the Rogue plates, aside from being a deep dish plate, was how glossy and slick the
Right.
paint was on it. So I want to say that Tim was the first person I saw, or that really probably the first guy ever to pinch the Rogue deep dish with a single hand that I'm aware of.
I should also mention that Tim was actually there for primarily for this the Open Strongman contest at the Shot Classic. So he competed on I think the Friday and the Saturday, or or maybe it was a Saturday. He did. I think there were 34 competitors, but only the top 10 made it to the second day. So he finished somewhere not outside the top 10. But so for him to do the grip contest after doing the strongman contest, I think that's impressive. It's a lot of work, and for him to finish, to win the class, and that was the biggest class. There's close to 20 guys in the super heavyweights in the arm lifting.
Oh yeah.
So he had the top country crush lift. He had the half the 110, which is a very good blob, and 19 reps. So that's strong performance. Jason Cooper, do you know who Jason Cooper is?
I feel like I know the name, but like I can't tell you. You know what I mean? Similar to some of the people we've talked about before, where like I feel like I know the name, and maybe if I saw them or saw some lifts of them, I might know.
He won the Open contest at the Arnold.
Okay, yeah, that's where I know it from then.
Yeah. So he was. I knew he was a strong guy, a big guy. 400 country crush. You get anyone who gets close to 400, that they're doing well. So I think this is his first year in grip. But 400 country crush, he got half. He got the half 110 blob, and he got the most reps in that class on the grandfather clock. So he took second behind Tim, but he wasn't far behind.
And then there's well, actually, I was gonna say, within about 4 points, it looks like third place, Dennis Long.
Yeah, exactly.
But he won the blob medley for those guys in that class with a 115 legacy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, those are the clear front runners. After that, there's a big jump to fourth and fifth.
Yeah.
But those are the three top guys in the biggest class of the contest, close to 20 guys. So overall, because of the high volume of competitors, the contest was moving pretty quickly. You had to be, don't go far, because if the weights aren't going up, you better be ready. But overall, I thought, Ricardo and Zane did a good job of keeping on schedule as much as possible. Unfortunately, because of time pressures, they weren't actually able to calculate who had won the contest. So we only found out officially who won when the results were posted. I mean, I think, Jalen and I, we sort of, those who won the class, we knew, but for everyone else,
but if there's like 3 or 4 points separating you from the next place, you're probably sitting around like waiting on Super Series results to come out. You know what I mean? Oh man, when are they going to post it? Yeah, it makes sense.
So that was, I guess, a bit of a, I think everyone would have liked to have known, but what can you do? I think they were like Ricardo said, I think they were, until a day before the contest, they were at 15 signups for the Sunday, and then all of a sudden 50. So that's great. It's great for the sport. A lot of people tried their hand out in arm lifting, and hopefully some of them enjoyed it, and they'll continue to compete and train for this, because it's the sport's grown and it's fun to see.
Yeah, no, for sure. And is there anything else about the competition, I guess, that would be of note, other than, obviously, okay, it's tied to the Shaw Classic. We already covered the pros. We covered the Open, new lifters. I mean, is there anything else that while you were there that, maybe others who didn't make the trip didn't get to see or didn't get to kind of be a part of? Is there anything that you could add maybe? Or is that we probably covered most of it?
I think we've probably covered most of it. Obviously, there's a big difference in terms of competing in a separate venue. We were competing in front of maybe 50 people, whereas those who were in, at least for the two events that were in the main venue, they were competing in front of thousands of people.
Yeah.
It's all good. I'm a little jealous, I guess, but you know, the fact that we're at the Olympia, that we're at the Arnold's, that we're at the Shaw Classic,
Mhm.
it's all great for eyeballs on the sport. And yeah, no, I was happy to be there. The Pro Strongman was an awesome contest, an awesome experience as well. I was just happy to be able to compete while I was there. So that was good.
Okay. Well, Eric, as always, thanks for helping out with these recaps and kind of running through all the statistics with me and everything else. Um, yeah, like I said, nothing else to really say about that. But good job to everybody that competed at the Shaw Classic, whether it was we'll say whether it was the Pro Strongman or whether it was Open Strongman competitors or Pro Arm Lifting, Open Arm Lifting, just anybody that was involved in basically putting it on the line and competing. You know, um, good job. And like I said, hopefully we'll see some of these names kind of pop up to where they'll be more familiar with us in the future, and we'll be mentioning some of these people in more competitions.
Right.
If they were newer lifters, hopefully they stick around and
Well,
host them, stuff like that. So
Ricardo announced the top 3 from this contest are qualified to go to the Olympia, the Worlds in October. So we'll see if some of these newer names decide to make the trip.
yeah, that's true, and they're not too far apart, so you could kind of okay, hey, I just did that thing. Well, let me roll into this
Yeah.
next competition and kind of see how it goes. So
Yeah.
yeah. Other than that, yeah, seems like it was a pretty well ran competition, especially considering that it was somewhat short notice.
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot of time. I mean,
Yeah.
for people to maybe travel, you get about a month or maybe 5-6 weeks notice, and it's kind of like, oh man, that's a big opportunity, but at the same time, it's hard for people sometimes on a month's notice just to like, hey, I'm going to Colorado, depending on where you're located.
Right.
But yeah, well, like I said, I'll let you go with that, and like I said, look forward to the next time we do another show or next competition we cover.
Sounds
So,
good.
yep. All right.